This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Jaguar, with 30 dealerships and over 3,000 vehicles in stock across North America.
When we think about a diesel car, usually we think of slow and smelly and doesn't have a lot of power, but pretty decent for fuel economy. But sporty isn't the word that we would usually use. But what if I told you you could? This 2018 Jaguar XF is a sporty alternative with a diesel engine. What we have here is a Prestige all-wheel drive, and they classify this as a 180 PS. That means it has a 180 horsepower, 318 pound-foot of torque, 2-liter turbo diesel engine. Now those numbers aren't too bad for an executive car, and an executive car designed by none other than Ian Callum. This is a pretty good alternative to somebody who doesn't want the typical Mercedes E-Class or BMW 5 Series. You want to stand out a little bit and drive a Jag. Now this one, base price when it was new was $65,700 Canadian, or about $58,725 in the US. There were a couple options on it. This one does have the Vision package, which adds the LED headlights, emergency forward braking, blind spot information, lane departure, and rear cross traffic alert. And you could really option these bad boys up quite a bit. I mean, this is sort of the second trim from the bottom out of about 5 that were sold for this model year here in Canada. So you could go up quite a bit, get different engines. But ours with the diesel is probably the one that you're going to be looking at if you want something that's good on the highway in terms of fuel economy, but you don't want to suffer too much and still have a sporty experience. Because I've got to say, this is the first diesel I've driven that's actually fun to drive. Now, all the Jaguar XFs sold here in Canada came with the 8-speed automatic transmission from ZF. It's a ZF 8HP 45, and it works well enough. We see ZF transmissions across the board, specifically when it comes to luxury vehicles like this. And ours, again, is all-wheel drive with a 68% bias to the rear wheels. Not 70, not 60, 68% by default. And Jaguar says that this vehicle has a near 50-50 weight distribution, and it feels really great on the road. If you haven't driven a Jag before, you really should. There's something special about the way they drive. Now, unfortunately, here in Canada, the XFs and sedans across the board for Jaguar have pretty much stopped production. You can still buy a new XF today, but this is essentially the last of the last when it comes to diesels, as they only offer one engine choice now for this current model year. So if you're looking for something different, you don't want to blend in, this is the way to go. And we wouldn't be featuring it today if it weren't for our friends at Jaguar. They've let me drive this vehicle for a week to be able to get to understand it fully, all the quirks that come with owning a Jag. And if you're interested in buying a used car from them, maybe even this 2018 Jaguar XF, you can save $200 off your purchase by going to promo.ashjaguar.com/Niall. That's my name, to save $200. When you go in store, let them know that I sent you there. You could buy this or one of the other 3,000 vehicles they have in stock across North America, with over 30 dealerships to serve you better. So big thanks to Jaguar for letting me feature this, because I wouldn't be able to do it without them. There's a couple things to talk about when it comes to the interior of this Jaguar XF. It's kind of interesting. The design cues on the inside are quite different from what we've seen from other luxury cars. When you go to start the car, the start button has a heartbeat-like look to it. As you're going to push that red button, it is pulsating. Unlike most cars that just have a light, there's small details there. The gear shifter will come out of the center area to reveal itself so that you can select which gear you want to go into. And the outermost air vents open up like garage doors. Now, you could say, yeah, a lot of that stuff is probably going to fall apart down the road, but it's the experience that matters when it comes to something like this. It's not just a car, it's a piece of art. Now, the interior, full leather. We have black leather on the inside. As far as technology goes, we have an 8-inch in-control infotainment system. That's the branding that Jaguar uses for their vehicles. You could have gone with a 10.1-inch professional version, but this one, as configured, uses the 8-inch. We have navigation, a backup camera, Bluetooth, Sirius XM, and radio. But the real key feature to the interior of this is the 825-watt Meridian surround sound system. That is the second thing I noticed when I got into this car, aside from how sporty a diesel actually feels. The sound system on this is truly phenomenal. Whether you're using Bluetooth, radio, or Sirius XM, it is an immersive sound experience that I haven't experienced at this price point. 17 speakers, but you would have to go up to something in the flagship luxury sedan market in order to get a similar experience from your audio system. So I have to say that it sounds absolutely great. And because this is a diesel, there's no real exhaust sounds anyway. You might as well have a really good audio system to drown out the noise of the road, even though the interior noise control is really good. You don't hear the engine, you don't hear the exhaust, you don't hear much of the outside world, but that sound system is truly spectacular. But I really do want to take it on the road. I want to show you why I'm so excited to finally get behind the wheel of a Jaguar, why you might want to be considering this mid-size executive sedan, and everything else about it if you're in the market for a used XF and you want to know what you should be looking for if you're buying. Let's start off with a performance test. There's no launch control, obviously. I'm in manual shift mode. Oh, buddy, we are ripping it. Oh, at 100. Okay. Now, on paper, this is supposed to do 0 to 100 kilometers in like 8.5 seconds, which is pretty slow. That's really slow, but it's a diesel, so it can be forgiven for it. But wow, this thing is really fun. And I have to say that, okay, in a straight line, it's not quick, but coming off the line, because there's so much torque with this, it really does have a good feel to it. And the overall drive, the ride of this is really good as well. And it's very soft on the road, and that's the first thing that I noticed. Okay, it's not the sport model, so that's probably why, but the way that this car handles is like it was one of those mid-performance models from the Germans, but then the ride, the actual suspension is nice and soft, so you get the best of both worlds without having to compromise on anything. And then you get the diesel. For me, this is good. I do a lot of highway driving. My fuel economy averages are pretty darn good. I mean, you can see below, about 5 and a bit liters per 100 kilometers for that test loop. That's really good. If we think back to the Chevy Cruze diesel that we did, I think we got like 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers or something on the exact same loop in pretty much similar conditions that we have here. It's nice and dry out, sunny, everything is essentially working for us. And I am impressed. This is a big car. It's a heavier car, obviously, than the Chevy Cruze would have been, but yeah, it's not like we're loaded up with options here, but still, good numbers for a diesel. Very impressed with that. But honestly, the sportiness, drive, and feel is really good. I was impressed when I got into it. There's a couple of drive modes that you can select. I'm in the dynamic mode right now. There's normal, eco, and then wet snow mode as well. Good thing we don't have to test that this week. Winter is finally over here, but we're able to test everything else, and I have to say that it's worked out really well. Now, the thing is, over the past couple of years, diesels have just completely gone extinct here in North America. It's very hard to buy them, and the luxury makers were pretty good at it, right? You know, you had something from everybody, depending on which size vehicle you went with. But I was always surprised that Jaguar had diesels, and maybe it's because I wasn't really a follower of Jaguar, just like a lot of these sort of niche luxury vehicles that I haven't had any real experience with. So, you know, when I knew that they had them in Europe, but when I found out they sold them here in Canada, and they sold a lot of them here in Canada, I was pretty impressed with it. So whether you're looking for a daily driver or something a little unique, chances are you're gonna find it in a diesel, unless you go up to the supercharged versions of these vehicles. But you know, you're getting something like this. It works out very well for daily driving, and you wouldn't tell. It's really hard to tell that this is a diesel, except obviously when you're parked somewhere, you got the window open, the engine's running, you can hear the diesel, but inside it's nice and quiet. And yeah, the HVAC's running a little bit because it was cool this morning. Now it's warmed up. We got a lot of sun coming in, so the fans are running a little bit more, but it's really quiet in here. The sound system is so good as well. Truly blew me away when I first tested it. I couldn't believe just how good it was, because usually in this price segment, yeah, you're not seeing something outstanding, but this really is very good. Now, you could have optioned this up. You could have got like a digital gauge cluster, as I mentioned, the 10.1-inch infotainment system. They had some cool stuff going on there. Apparently, the driver would see something different from the passenger. So there's a lot of things you could have had on this, but this is sort of representative of what the average vehicle would have been sold like here in North America. So it gives us a good idea of what, you know, you'll actually be buying, not necessarily the stuff that you would want to have, the stuff that it is sort of essential to have. We have heated front seats, dual zone climate. I do find though it's a bit of a pain in the butt to get to the seat controls. You have to push a button and then the infotainment will open up to ask you what type of seat heat you want. So it's a little cumbersome. And yeah, some of the interior stuff here, it's just a slightly different way of doing it. The garage door opening style HVAC vents, I don't know, I mean, it's certainly interesting, but I like it. It's different, and that's what's important when you're buying a luxury vehicle, because if you just buy something that's kind of the same as everything else, then what's the point? It's not special. This though, even though it might not be necessarily the best, I like it because it's something unique, it's something different. It's giving you as a buyer something other than your default configuration. And I do like it. Just the wraparound dashboard here, very reminiscent of some cars that I've driven. I won't name it because it would be an insult to this Jaguar if I mention it, but the door cards wrap into the dashboard. Just says Jaguar everywhere. There's one in the middle of this wraparound on all the little HVAC knobs as well. It says Jaguar. It's everywhere, just to remind you that you're driving something different. And I like it. And look, off the line, usable power is really good. Okay, 0 to 100, as we saw, was pretty slow, but when you're getting off the line in full sport mode with the dynamic mode for the suspension and everything, engine, and the sport mode for the transmission, getting off the line is what you need. You're going to be doing a lot of driving in town. That's where you want to have that power. You want to be able to get up to 50 kilometers or so with ease, and that's what I find with this. Everything is pretty much effortless. I'm pretty impressed with it. When I saw it was a diesel, I thought, oh, diesel, we're going to be having no fun this week, but proving myself wrong every single turn I take. This car, truly spectacular. I'm really impressed with it. I'm really impressed. Just the handling on it is really good. If you told me that I was driving a non-performance model right now, I would have been surprised. That's just how good this is. So if you're always been curious why you might want to consider something like this, that's why. It's the chassis, it's the platform, it's the engineering that goes on with the suspension and how the vehicle works. And again, this isn't even the top end trim. If you went with something like the Portfolio or one of the, I think they call it R Sport, you'd have even better handling. It'd be nuts. This is really good just like this. Holy man. I never thought I'd be driving a fun diesel, but here we are. It's not only fun, but it's a diesel. I mean, it's great. I like it. I like it quite a bit. This is good. Before we wrap up, though, I just want to talk about a couple things. You know, the interior here, as we said, the road noise is good and everything, but space is good too. I do feel a little tight in here, and that's sort of the direction the executive car segment has been going over the past couple of years. They make the interiors smaller, but overall, I am comfortable in here. Visibility isn't the best. I do find that, you know, like the shoulder line here is a little too high, the belt line, and out back, it's just a little difficult to see out of for other mid-size executive cars. So you do lose a little bit on visibility, but yeah, the interior space is usable. Backseat space is good. I can get into there. No real issues. My daughter, quite a bit smaller than me, obviously. She's a kid. She's got no problems in there. So the interior ergonomics is definitely good. Plus the trunk space, the boot, if you're in England, huge, tons of space in there. So still some good reasons to consider a sedan over an SUV. And overall, I'm pretty impressed with it. So we should go back though. Let's talk about some of those common problems, things to look out for if you're in the market for this generation Jaguar XF. We'll go over some of the information about other types of engines and configurations that were available so that you are better informed when it comes time to buy a Jag. Alright, so I promised we would go over some of the details about this vehicle, and we will. There are a number of different options for the engines, depending on your market and depending on the year. As I mentioned, this one is the 180 PS, meaning 180 horsepower. That's the simplest way to figure out which one you've got. It'll pretty much tell you the horsepower in the name. There were a number of diesel options and a number of gas options. The badging on the back will change. Here in Canada, we had the 2.0 diesel, which is this. There was a 2.5T and a 3.5T, but they're pretty much all based off of the same 2-liter engine. So there's some choices out there. I don't know if there's one that is more reliable. I can't really find anything about this because this is still just too new. There wasn't a lot of info about the engines itself, but it does seem that the diesels are pretty straightforward. It's the electrical issues that you need to look out for. And as I mentioned, I don't have to go online to find some of the common problems, because there are some small things that have gone wrong that will probably go wrong on yours as well. First off, the hood will sometimes just say that it's open. That happened to me at 1:30 in the morning. The car alarm went off in my garage, woke up the entire planet, because the sensor that actually determines whether a car hood is open or closed kind of fails over time, especially if you wash the engine bay, you get any sort of anything really on it, it could fault the sensor. So you can bypass it, or you can just replace it outright. So there are some options on there. It's super simple to do yourself, and the part, it doesn't seem to be too much, about $40 or $50 from Jaguar. So it's not overly expensive, but those will go. And I do believe that there was a technical service bulletin, a recall for that specific problem. So keep an eye for that. I also have a problem with the child lock on the vehicle. The passenger side rear door, even though it's an electronically operated child lock, it will not disengage. You can hear it. There's something going on there, but it won't disengage. So the interior door doesn't work on there. That could just be wear and tear. You never know. Unfortunately, when it comes to a used car like this, anytime we're featuring them, they're not perfect. That's just how it comes, but there's that issue too. And then I also did have a check engine light that came on, and they were non-applicable codes. So I'm thinking that it was related to the hood issue. But you could have issues with the infotainment system and electronics throughout. That seems to be somewhat common, but honestly, when I look online for issues with this generation XF, there's not a lot of data. So either it's not overly bad, or there just aren't enough of them on the road and not enough problems that have come up so far to really understand what could go wrong. A vehicle like this, lower trim, second from the bottom, you're going to have less tech, meaning there will be less to go wrong. But if you go up to something like the Portfolio with tons of tech on it, just like any used luxury car, you could be looking at some repairs there. And as always with any vehicle, I always recommend having a trusted mechanic look over it. If you have the service history that comes with the vehicle, even better. You can kind of see what has been done with it, but definitely take it to somebody who knows what they're doing when it comes to a Jaguar or a diesel specifically, if you're going for one like this, just to have a little bit of extra peace of mind. But as I mentioned, this is pretty much being discontinued. Jaguar is moving on from their vehicles, the XE, which was a smaller compact vehicle, and the XJ, that was the flagship luxury sedan. Those are all gone now. This can still be purchased on the top end trim for 2021, but I don't expect to see it for that much longer. And unfortunately, Jaguar has scrapped an all-electric version of the XF, so we're not going to be seeing that either, which is a bit of a bummer. But honestly, I've really enjoyed this car. It's been really fun, get my first taste of the Jaguar brand, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. Again, I want to give a big thanks to Jaguar for letting me feature this vehicle. And again, you can save $200 off the purchase of your car from them. Go to promo.ashjaguar.com/Niall to be able to save, or if you go in store, you can let them know that I helped you out. But I've really enjoyed my time with this. If you have any questions about this 2018 Jaguar XF, then please let me know. Leave a comment below, give a thumbs up to the video, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.